It's nice to see a packed audience. There's no space to move. Obviously, you knew that I was going to be here. Yeah, that's it. So, my name is Stephen Hickmore. I'm the director and co-owner of the Swiss Hotel School. Just a brief introduction. My background in the industry is many, many years. You can see from the grey hair that I've been through most of it. The rest of the panel here have got excuses. Obviously, their lives have not been as stressed as mine has with hospitality. But anyway, there you are. And I'd like to introduce my my two colleagues to be able to talk on this subject. First on my left is Lindiwe Sangweni Sidu. Lindiwe is the COO of the City Lodge Group. I've known Lindiwe for many, many years. In fact, I've known her since she came back to the country and was the human resources executive at the Hyatt. I think that was it. And if I'm wrong, then obviously my brain is in a fuss. Amongst many, many other things. Lindiwe is sort of well versed on this subject, but she's also an author and a very excellent book called The Syndicate of 22 Natives. So if you ever see it, I know Lindiwe has actually got a dress to match the cover as well. So welcome, Lindiwe.
Thank you very much.
The other young gentleman there on my left is Gustav Peterser. If you saw him, he was in the last talk as well. He's the general manager of the Saxon Hotel, a very beautiful hotel, probably one of the best hotels in South Africa. And congratulations on the position you have there. 20 years experience in the industry, with the Saxon for quite some years. And lots of experience in staff development, operations and rest. So welcome. Our subject today is to be on the broad topic is about people, not positions, and about the hospitality industry. It's a really burning subject at the moment, and I want to introduce it with a little bit of a fact that I found out, and I think Fed Haas, which Gustav is the inland chairman of, produced a paper recently talking about the dearth of leadership within the industry. So I think 70-something% of the respondents to that survey said that there's a lack of leadership in the hospitality industry. Now, I think a lot of that then comes from, are we attracting young people into the industry? We're certainly inviting chefs in, but are we inviting hospitality management into our industry? Do people really then understand what it is that we do and what it is to be a hospitality manager? So I want to start with some questions. I've got some prompts here, so please excuse me if I refer to this. But first of all, I'd like to be able to ask Lindiwe, seeing as though she's the closest one to my left, what sort of new roles and skills have you seen come into the industry recently that maybe people need to be aware of, and how they're evolving in terms of traveller expectations?
Yeah, so thanks for that question, Stephen. I think it's good to contextualize where we're coming from in this debate and this discussion. And I think one of the main things that we should all focus on, especially in an era of post-COVID, is the customer, the guest. What is happening in the life of the guest? Our guest is evolving, or is always and constantly evolving, as was discussed previously in one of the other talks. And if we understand what it is that guest is looking for, so you've heard of leisure, you've heard of blended tourism, and basically what it's saying is your typical business guest is not only a business guest, but is also there on a leisure visit, and looking at ways to make one trip hit many touch points. So I might be on business, and I might have a meeting, hybrid meeting, a virtual meeting, but I know that I can catch a tour to Soweto and go and have a wonderful experience on Vilakazi Street and enjoy the wonderful culture of, South Africa from a township experience. Gone are the days of saying work is 8 to 5, and therefore my experience is very singular. So I bring that as an example to say it's important to understand where the guest is coming from in order for us to understand the evolution of the skills that are required to meet their needs. Another thing to look at that's also important from a contextual point of view is South Africa as a market. Who are our guests besides our local and our domestic guests? And understanding that as we open up to big markets like China, like India, like Indonesia, like Malaysia, to be very alert and aware of what is that guest coming to look for in South Africa. Yes, they're coming for an authentic South African experience. They want to know who we are as people. They want to know about our culture, our history, and all the things that come with it. But they will also occasionally come with their own requirements. I might come from China and expect a Chinese breakfast because I want to feel at home. Or I might come from India and expect something that reminds me of my home, you know, the old saying, you know, your home away from home. So it's that gentle balance of understanding and being very well researched. So giving that as a context of what is happening and how our guests are evolving and where they're coming from, source markets. I think, therefore, it's so important to note that the foundation, first of all, for anyone who wants to be in our industry, particularly in South Africa, I'll talk from a South African context, is matric is important. As an HR practitioner or anyone in the industry who's hiring, we would always want to make sure that matric is the foundation, because if we have matriculants in our space, it means we have room to develop them. It means we can work with them and take them through their career and map a career for that individual into perpetuity, whether it's with us or even if they go to another hotel group or a restaurant or a different environment. So matric as a foundation. It's always nice if you are passionate about this industry, of course, to have gone to hotel school or to university that provides either a hospitality management course or, you know, culinary course or a chef course or management course, because that then gives you that basics and it starts directing your career. But the approach that I think that is becoming more predominant is what is called career mapping, where you really pause and stop and say, what am I going to do when I get into the industry post my education, you know, my first year or my certificate or my diploma? Once I get in as a chef, for example, am I planning to be a commis or a chef de partie or a head chef? And is my career going to stop there? And that's where we now start talking about the specializations that come in. So, for example, you know, gastronomy is becoming such a fascinating field. It's what all head chefs or all people who are in the chefing environment should be looking to, because it says you're looking at a number of things. You're looking at dietary requirements of people. Our, you know, guests are becoming far much more discerning about what they eat.
Yes.
They want to know whether it's gluten-free or if there are allergens in it, or if as a diabetic is your jam sugar-free, or if I'm lactose intolerant, do you have options for me? And can my omelette be as delicious as the cheesy omelette Gustav is going to eat, or the, you know, egg white omelette that I'm going to eat?
Yes.
You know, so all those things become so much more important that it's up to the individual who's driving their career, and also the institution or the organization or hotel group or restaurant that you're with, to plan what it is that we need to evolve into skills. And so,
Yes.
just as a last point so that we can pause a bit, you know, I always think cultural storytelling is also an important part of your gastronomic experience. I talked about the example of the guest who leaves his business meeting and then goes to Soweto for an experience on Vilakazi Street. Why does he do that? He wants to go and experience the local flavor, wants to understand what is it that makes South Africa vibey. He's read about it, he's heard about it, but there now is that experience. Why can't chefs bring Soweto into their restaurants? I'm not stopping the experience of going to Soweto. I think that's important. But you can also, through research, bring in that experience. There's one chef called, I'm sure you all know him, Wandile Mabaso, who does an extremely amazing job with fine dining. And he serves a particular dish, and it arrives smoking. And he is, you know, it's this egg that's sitting on top of impepu, which is sage. So if you're English speaking, that's sage. If you're Zulu speaking, impepo is what we burn when we want to invoke our ancestors and we want to talk to our forebears. So now here's this plate arriving at your table with fine dining, and champagne, etc. And as he puts it down in front of you, he's telling you what this piece of trout is from Dahlstrom and the whole story that goes with where the fish comes from in our country. And Dahlstrom becomes a whole new experience. And then the impepu, everyone is curious. What is this smoke? What does it do? And now I'm telling you the story of how I bring my ancestors into the room. All of that just becomes an experience. And so we're saying, let's be a little bit much more evocative about
Yes,
how we look at
yes.
skills.
Yeah, and I think thank you for that, because I think that's a very good introduction to it. And one of the things that then shows is, do we really show off what is the best of South Africa?
Yes.
Because people coming here, and I know the pleasure part of things has now become, you can, if you do something interesting, you can get people to stay for a couple more days.
Yes.
And not just go home. No, there's business in that.
Exactly.
There's business and there's sustainable in it. If one is sustainability, when one looks at then, for instance, bringing Soweto to town or bringing them to Sandton on the other one. Gustav, just on that, and Lindiwe sort of makes the point, which certainly illustrates that the hospitality industry is getting more and more complex. And so with that, then there's a lot of knowledge and a lot of leadership then is then needed. How do businesses then create a long-term plan to be able to then meet the different career pathways that people are looking at?
Such a... don't know if this thing's working. Yeah, there we go. So it's a loaded question, Stephen, because at the end of the day, everyone has a very different take on how we make sure that people stay in the industry. Hospitality has for a very long time been deemed the stepping stone until you reach the next opportunity in your life. And regrettably, hospitality has lost that zest of being an appealing industry to go into for a lot of people, because it's extremely hard work. And the expectation is that as someone that is working in the industry, you're going to travel the world. So you have the opportunity to potentially work in different places around the world. Doesn't mean you're staying in the hotel, in the guest room. You aren't necessarily dining in all the outlets. But the reality is that you do have the opportunity to experience it. And Lindiwe mentioned that, we have to create the pipeline. We have to be able to show someone that, yes, there is sacrifice. There's a little bit of compromise. You have to really commit yourself to a certain number of years of hard work before you start enjoying the luxuries of the industry to the degrees that can be enjoyed. But I think people don't often have the opportunity to understand what the landscape looks like, and no one takes the time to sit down and share with them. And unfortunately, I think that when you don't have an idea of where your destination is, you lose the motivation, you lose the intrigue, you don't understand what could come off, what could potentially present itself in 6 months' time if I persevere. And if we show people that you can reach this milestone, and with a little bit of ongoing work in that area, you can end up in another position, you can visit another country. I think it's down to the industry to really set out the landscape for the young people coming into the industry. And until last year, I would have been deemed part of the youth as well. And I'm out of that category now. But I know that I struggled to get that. I was very fortunate in the sense that I had a leader in our MD at the Saxon, Mr. Cohen, who took the time to sit down with me. And more people would benefit richly off of having someone present them with that roadmap.
I think that really gets to the point, is that are we just stuffing rosters so that we've got skills to be able to do what we want, or are we then developing careers? So where Mr. Cohen, for instance, would be different, and he has helped to develop your career. So that's a really good example of that career mapping. What I find in the industry is certainly the old retainers, mostly my age group, will happily go out there and tell everybody what a terrible industry is. You're going to work your arse off. You're not going to achieve very much. You're going to be badly paid. And it goes on, and it goes on, and it goes on. Now, isn't that part of our problem, that we represent our industry in this negative fashion out to young people, when we know in our hearts, if we're still in the industry, we must have loved it somewhere along the line? So, if I can put that one over to you, Lindiwe.
Yeah, I think can everyone hear? I think we are our own worst enemies in how we do portray our industry as being tough, your child will come and say, I want to do hospitality. You say, oh, babes, it's tough, and yet you did it, and here we are 30 some years later, and still going strong. So like any industry, you have to be passionate. So there is a reason that you look to the hospitality industry. And I'm usually cautious with young people who maybe just out of desperation are looking for a job. And so when we raise the caution of it being a hard industry, is we just want to do a reality check with the individual in front of us to say, are you aware that, you must have, resilience, perseverance, but so do you need it in the finance industry, more in the marketing industry, and many other industries. So passion is the first thing. But I think secondly, building on the point that Gustav brought up is, what do you do in terms of planning how you're going to do this? So it could be, in many cases, that university is not accessible to many of our people, or an opportunity to go to a good hotel school or a chefing school is not an opportunity. And that's why I stressed matric. Because when you then come into our environment, it's really now understanding that the HR department and training department plays the role in assisting you to career map. But your preparation should be one that says, I'm in for the long haul. I understand the hours. I understand that it's not your 8 to 5 job, and that we're actually dovetailing the guest throughout their experience. So yes, it's a tough industry, but it also has so many delightful moments. That pleasure of creation, because you are creators when you're in the culinary industry. You are creating experiences on a plate, and be it breakfast or lunch or dinner or an event. If it delights you to make people happy, that already is your reward. But more than anything, I think what we're all stressing is start having a plan for what it is you need, so that beyond your matric, you can start building on your certificate courses. Accredited courses are important, and getting to a point where you can say, I now have all the basics that are required, say, for example, to be a head chef, and now am I going to specialize in environmental sustainability? Environmental sustainability is very important to guests. Some of them make their decisions on, I'm staying at this particular establishment because I like the environmental practices and sustainability.
Lindiwe, you're so speaking my language. I mean, I did a lecture this morning. Environmental sustainability is the subject. Yeah. And then trying to put out there how important it is in terms of the stories you got there with guests. What sort of fish are you putting? Is it sustainable fish? How are you using local ingredients? Are you using your purchasing power to be able to uplift small suppliers and those things? And I think one of the things guests do is that hospitality industry is very complex, and it's become more complex. I know when I started, I didn't need to know about the business. I didn't need to know whether they were making money or not. I just had to be a happy, smiley person. And I want to put this to Gustav: is there an issue where the conversation out there is if you're not really the brightest at school, then the hospitality industry might be the perfect industry to you. Now, for you. Now, how does that resonate with you as a statement?
Yeah, I dislike that. The hospitality industry is hugely complex.
So glad you said
that. It's a complex industry. We've got so many different roles and positions, and unfortunately, a lot of people, when they think hospitality, they think two things, or three to be fair: reception, chef, housekeeping.
Yeah.
There are so many different positions and opportunities. A hotel, and like a restaurant as well, it's a little city. It's a village. There's something for everyone. If you have the right character, the right personality, you have a doing attitude rather than a saying attitude, you want to solve problems, you want to look and interact with people, you're the right person for the industry. You don't necessarily have to have the highest IQ, but being able to deliver on that emotional quotient that people are looking for, you're a good fit for the industry.
And I also think the demand now is becoming for more advanced skills. And we're certainly seeing that in education, is that there's more to learn. And there's a lot more to learn than just serving a table or smiling at a guest. There's a lot of background things. If you're going to make this a business, you're going to have a wonderful, wonderful journey within it. I know we don't have much time, but I'd just like to ask Unfortunately, we've been shortened slightly. But just as summing up, really based on what would you then say to this generation Z? And I know in this room mostly are not, but then let's call it the anxious generation, if you don't mind, coin a phrase. What would you then say to them about why this industry would suit them or not?
Well, I would say, first of all, this generation is our next guest profile that is giving us what we need to be who we need to be serving. We focus a lot on the millennials and what they want and what they're looking for. And it's this generation that will understand that better than we ever would. And I think it's important to use, there's so much research material out there. I would research and spend a lot of time understanding what it is that you want to pursue, what your joy is. If you are a social media, bookie, and you love influencing and all of that, gone are the days where if a young person says, I want to be an influencer, and we say that's not a career, it definitely is something we have to understand. What's needed and how do you bring it into our world of hospitality? And so I would really emphasize the point of researching. Artificial intelligence is a big part. There was a previous discussion that talked a lot around artificial intelligence. How is it driving where I sit, and where do I have an opportunity to play a role in becoming part of that?
Yeah, I often feel that my intelligence is completely artificial these days. I've been able to fake it all these years, let's be honest. And Jeff, ChatGPT, is just the best. Gustav, just some closing words there as well. And to you, if you don't mind me saying, how do you then accommodate? How does a business then accommodate the new generation coming through?
I think the new generation actually have the answers before we are asking the questions. I had to interact with my niece the other day, and I asked her a simple question. She picked up an iPad and she hit the voice button and she Googled something completely by voice. And I kind of went, I have guests at the hotel that would never do that. In 20 years, that's going to be my guest in a hotel. If you aren't answering that approach to life, we're suffering. So we almost need to take a step back and say, what is it that you would like to see?
And what could you learn from them?
What we could learn from them is they're resourceful. The generation that's coming through now have an answer to everything. It might not always be their personal thought up concept, but the access to information and the ability to convey and share that very quickly, very swiftly, and very often to a level of correctness that's very acceptable is remarkable. And I think that's something we should be leveraging off.
Oh, thank you. And just in summing up, because we've got to now finish, unfortunately, I could chat forever and I wanted to ask some really controversial questions, but seeing as though I'm not able to do that and finish up, I just want to thank you both for spending some time with me today. Lindiwe and Gustav, thank you very much indeed. I know you've got busy days. We've all got to then carry on with what we get excited about, which is our positions, our industry, our careers, and developing people and being great leaders. And thank you very much. Thank you, everybody, for listening.